So let's start with a quick check of what IP address we're presenting externally. Let's use IE and we'll visit whatismyip.com. So without running the browser through a proxy, we show 50.72.54.207. Remember back to when we were setting up bindings, we had two sources for incoming traffic, local loopback, or local host if you prefer, and our external adapter, or local area connection, where we set up the static LAN IP and did the router forwarding to firewall stuff. Let's first of all make sure we can send our browser requests through our proxy using the local host adapter. To set up Internet Explorer 9 to use a proxy, start by pressing the Alt key to get the top line menu up. Then from the Tools menu, choose Internet Options. From there, we want the Connections tab, then the LAN Settings button. Now check the little box that says Use a Proxy Server and fill in the address and local port as localhost 8080 and click OK. Click OK again to get out of the Tools menu. And let's enter whatismyip.com in the address bar. In every collection of computer users, there always seems to be a few who don't realize that the address bar is not the Google search box. If you've messed up your browser with toolbars to the point that you don't even have a visible address bar anymore, try pressing F4 in Internet Explorer. Woohoo! It says exactly the same 50.72.54.207 it did before. And actually, this is what we expect. We set up our proxy service to accept incoming requests on our IP's port 8080 and forward those requests on to the desired site looking like they came from us. It's not surprising then that the outgoing requests from our proxy look just like requests that come directly from our browser. Let's try one more thing that is guaranteed to catch you up if I don't mention it. Instead of putting localhost in the proxy address box, let's plug our IP address in there. That should test the port forwarding stuff as the request goes out to the internet and then comes back into our router, right? Alt, Tools, Internet Options, Connections tab, LAN Settings button, and 50.72.54.207. Then OK and OK. Now if we hit reload, what's the problem? Do we have our port forwarding messed up? Is the firewall preventing the incoming traffic from reaching WIngate? Actually, it's none of the above. The way a machine finds an address on the internet doesn't work for finding its own address, at least not without routing table entries. To verify our proxy service is accessible from the outside world, we can't be sitting on our own LAN. Let's not leave our browser messed up, so we want Alt, Tools, Internet Options, Connections tab, LAN Settings button, and we can simply uncheck the little box that says Use a Proxy and click OK and OK again. Now let's make sure we can reach Google again. I'll suggest a couple of possibilities for how to test our proxy. The easiest way is to call, text, email, post, or somehow get someone else to help you out by putting the proxy info into their browser and seeing if it works. You may want to double check the router forwarding is set correctly and the firewall rule is set up right before you make the request, but that's probably the easiest way. Another possibility, and it's the way I'm going to use here, requires that your ISP is able to provide you with a second dynamic IP address, hopefully for free. What we are going to do is simply set up a second computer to use that other IP address. With a bit of additional hardware, that computer can interact with your proxy service just like a remote computer. With my ISP, I am entitled to a second IP, but I initially had to phone them and request that they enable it on my account. This is reasonable enough since most people simply hook a router to their modem and therefore never pull a second IP address no matter how many computers they have in their home LAN. To make use of a second IP, you need a switch or a hub, and that's an Ethernet hub, not a USB hub. Ethernet hubs are slowly going the way of the dinosaurs, so you're most likely going to opt for a switch. For our purposes, there is almost no difference, but for interest's sake, the biggest difference is that traffic for all channels can be overheard on all other channels with a hub. A switch routes just one channel's traffic out to each output, sort of. In addition to a switch, you're probably going to want a second router. You can definitely connect the machine directly to the switch, but that's like connecting direct to the modem, and that's something I really do not advise for security reasons. Total cost, assuming you've got the second computer available, could easily be under $30. My Dynex 4-port switch cost me $15 brand new at Future Shop, and I actually grabbed a couple of them. Routers are a bit more, but don't forget places like Goodwill. I've grabbed a couple there for under $10 each. The connections are easy. Modem to switch and then switch to each of the routers. Our Proxy service computer plugs into one router and our test machine plugs into the other. Make sure that after you get all the Ethernet cables connected, you then unplug all the power connectors and give things a few seconds to power down. Reconnect the power connectors starting with the modem, wait for the lights to stabilize, then plug in the switch, then plug in each router. When each router powers up, it pulls a unique external dynamic IP from your ISP. Then for each router, any computer connected to that router will present that IP externally. Here's a shot from the machine I've got going through the other router. It's an XP Service Pack 1 virtual machine running on a VMware workstation, but it'll do for our test machine. Let's start by checking what IP address we're presenting. Let's go to www.whatismyip.com again, but we use Firefox this time just for a bit of variety. And we'll see we're coming into the site from 50.72.52.141. Well, let's put in the IP of our proxy service and see what happens. With this slightly older version of Firefox, we start with Tools and then Options. Then we want the Advanced category. And on the Network tab, we want to click the Settings button in the Connection Info area. Then let's select Manual Setup. We want to enter our other IP, 50.72.54.207, and our services port number 8080. Then click OK, then OK again to get back to the browser. If we hit the refresh button, woohoo again, it works. Let's make absolutely sure we're seeing what we think we are. Let's go back to the machine the proxy service is on and get a browser open. This time, let's go to the router at our gateway address 192.168.0.1. We'll log in, then get to the spot where we set up port forwarding and uncheck that little Enable checkbox and then click Save Settings. If our other machine is coming in through the router, just like a real-world connection, then this should put our test browser on the other machine right out of business. Back to our other machine, and just so we don't get fooled by the page being in the browser cache, let's close and reopen Firefox. Yep, connection is dead. Let's just check as we re-enable port forwarding on the proxy service machine and click Save Settings again. Back to the test machine, and let's try to reach What Is My IP again. Yep, it's back. This shows traffic is at least going through the switch and the router out front of our adapter, and that pretty much shows we're online.